So we've IPO'd. We're now Raspberry Pi Holdings PLC. The foundation remains by far our largest shareholder. What does the whole process? What's the outcome of this mean for the foundation?
Well, first, congratulations, mate.
Oh, thank you
It's
very much.
Big achievement, and we're very proud, very, very proud of everything you and the team have done. And what it means for the foundation, well, of course, now we've got some capital, and that gives the foundation a sustainable basis to increase our educational impact over the next decade and more. And that's huge, right? You know, we've achieved a lot over the past 10 years, and we've got.
And particularly, I mean, back to the Cambridge thing. You know, a little tiny dream at the start. Computer science has gone from being the easiest subject to get into at Cambridge to the hardest subject to get. So we're kind of done there, right? So I can tick that on my very short list.
You can tick that one.
I can tick the very first thing on what was originally a one-thing list and is now a 100-thing list that you guys are working your way down.
Yeah, and we see our mission now as global. So as you know, we're working all over the world, lots of work happening in the US, in India, in Kenya, South Africa, and indeed through partnerships all over the world. So really what the IPO means for us is it enables us to carry on doing more of that work, benefit more young people, help train more teachers over the next 10 years.
And you've got all those capabilities and those assets, those resources that you've developed kind of primarily, not entirely, but primarily in the context of the UK, in the context of England, that you're now able to kind of take out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And more than that, we're trying to be a global organisation. So we're increasingly hiring educators, researchers and teams around the world. So we're learning as much, actually, from other parts of the world where we're working as we are exporting what we've learned in the UK. So it's genuinely a global endeavour now, which is super exciting.
And just as, when I've been talking about the work, the engineering work in particular that we do here at Raspberry Pi, and I can sort of see that kind of 5-year, there's a sort of kind of an obvious kind of 5-year roadmap of activity. The work we do now kind of sets us up for 5 years. It sort of feels like, some of these new opportunities you've got and the capital that's been provided by the IPO is going to do a very similar thing for you guys.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And it's a combination for us about what happens in schools and changing that. Also what happens outside of schools, so code clubs and other things that we do that inspire kids to get involved, but then the research. And, that's one of the long-term bets that we're making is increasing our understanding of how do we help young people learn how to make things with technology.
And I sort of felt that's been a distinctive element of the way the foundation's worked, certainly under your tenure, has been that it cares about whether the interventions that it's making work and is prepared to look critically at its own activities, assess them, double down on the things that work, cut off the things that don't.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
That's exciting.
It's good.
I guess when we started the Raspberry Pi Foundation, there was an expectation that really the hardware was the contribution, that this was going to be a thing that happened on a very small scale, that it was very Cambridge-centric. It was, small scale, 1,000 units, 10,000 units in our wildest dreams, a small scale thing which would help out in Cambridge. Now, one of the interesting surprises for me about Raspberry Pi, certainly in the early days, was that we were able to make money out of doing this. There was a surplus of money being generated by the commercial activities of then Raspberry Pi Limited. Now, and obviously that's allowed us to make contributions to the foundation to fund some of the work the foundation has done. But it's not only about that, is it? There's always been kind of a deeper level of interaction between the two bits of the Raspberry Pi organisation.
I think that's right. I think we share a mission in many ways, and certainly a set of values which kind of comes from the maker, the engineering kind of, and also the education sector, and that community which has always been such a big part of the story. And the way I see it is we are advancing that mission in different but complementary ways. And there's a nice overlap in the middle, which is low-cost computing. So we want to remove price as a barrier to a teacher or a young person having a computer. That's core to what you do. It's core to what we do. But then the other thing that the foundation does is not dependent on the Raspberry Pi computer. And that's about helping develop curriculum, teacher professional development, inspirational activities for young people, and that sits alongside the work that you do so brilliantly, I think, which is about democratizing computing for people in industry or entrepreneurs.
It's always been exciting that we can kind of we don't need to march along in lockstep, right? That you guys, as you say, a lot of what you do at the foundation is platform agnostic. A lot of the work that we do at Raspberry Pi Limited, Raspberry Pi PLC now, isn't directly related. Isn't necessarily directly related to the kind of the educational mission, but they can kind of come apart and come together. And sometimes they come together in surprising ways. I guess AstroPi is probably the earliest example of this, where you see us developing hardware, and then you see the foundation building an educational program around that hardware.
That's right. That's right. And the Raspberry Pi computer is central to lots of what we do, not just the Raspberry Pi main computer, but also the Pico and other devices that you're developing. I think one of the most important things, you've said this, and I repeat it all the time without crediting you, is when we give young people a Raspberry Pi computer, we can say that's not a toy. That is the same computer that the world's leading scientists, research and engineers use. And I think that's very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, we are giving young people access to tools that allow them to really bring their imagination to life in all sorts of ways. And we see that through, you know, coolest projects, competitions that we run where kids are using the technology to build the most amazing things.
And you give them a ladder that doesn't really have a top. I mean, that's the lovely thing about these pieces of hardware, that they're not toys. You know, the hardware themselves, the software environments that we build on top of them, there is a continuity between print hello world down the bottom, yep, and real industrial scale, commercial scale, you know, deployment in the wild.
You mentioned Astro Pi, and that's a great example where kids are developing AI applications which are running on the Raspberry Pi computers on the International Space Station and conducting real scientific experiments. It's mind-blowing. These are teenagers, right? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and that's the hope, you know, that's the intention, is that we can, you know, that nothing changes as a result of this. That's the thing, what we've got to emphasize, is that nothing changes as a result of this transaction, that those things that we did together before, we didn't have to do them. We did them because we chose to do them, and I think there's nothing about the new situation which is going to change the way those choices work.
I think that's right. I mean, it's always been kind of a tale of two Raspberry Pis, right? Two organisations sharing a mission, doing the things that they're set up to do.
Sharing a logo.
Oh, look, sharing a logo. You know, the capabilities that we have, I think, are complementary in that sense, and none of that's changing.
That's
not at all. So, Eben, one of the remarkable things about Raspberry Pi, and you know, you and the co-founders take credit for this, is you set it up as a company that's owned by a charity, and that's probably unique, right?
Yeah, it's unusual. So I think you have a lot of situations where you have a commercial company and a foundation that share a name, and that's generally a commercial company that once it achieves a level of success, it sets up a charitable foundation to pursue some goal which is meaningful to its founders or its employees or some other stakeholder, right? We're unusual in that we set it up the other way up. So we set up the foundation, and then we created Raspberry Pi Limited under the foundation initially as a wholly owned subsidiary. It's a structure that's been very good for us. In particular, it's allowed this separation of focus, I guess, between you and me after you joined us in 2015.
Yep, 2015. Yeah.
We were able to have this separation of focus where you could focus on the work at the foundation, and I could focus on the engineering. I mean, I am an engineer originally. I still love the I still get my hands dirty. I still love the engineering. So being able to focus on the engineering, being able to focus on the business, being able to focus on creating value for our shareholder, creating value for the foundation. So it's been a good structure, and of course it's the structure that we will still have. Yeah. You know, with the foundation obviously no longer as a 100% shareholder or as a majority shareholder, but you're still as by far the most significant shareholder in the organisation.
Yeah, and I think that point about value creation, so, you know, one thing, and we should acknowledge this, is a huge amount of public benefits being created because you took that decision. You know, in terms of the money that's flowed to the foundation already, and you know, our goal going forward is that Raspberry Pi in its new incarnation is as successful as possible for the benefit of all shareholders, right? Because that benefits the foundation. And I think one of the other things is this commitment to low-cost computing that we've agreed between the organisations, which ensures that there will always be Raspberry Pi computer available at a super affordable price for teachers, for students, but also for entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, that's right. So right now that's the 2 gigabyte. That's the 2 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 4. It probably won't be for all time. I would be unsurprised to see that designated device be a Raspberry Pi 5 at some point in the future. But the important thing is, yes, it's available at a regulated, designated low cost, and it's available to everybody at that low cost. And this was the easiest commitment, I think, for Raspberry Pi to sign up to, because, as I say, we've never made a pricing decision in the trading company, in the commercial organisation. We've never made a pricing decision that's based on our shareholder being a charity. We've never made a pricing decision, exclusively for the benefit of the young people who consume our platform. One of the things I'm proudest of in terms of what Raspberry Pi as a broader organisation, a broader movement has accomplished, is that we've created a world where small entrepreneurs, the 100 unit, 200 unit, 500,000 unit OEM is able to build products that they'd never be able to build if they didn't have a device with the sophistication of a Raspberry Pi available at that regulated low price point. When we're talking about, we were building the ESG story around Raspberry Pi for the IPO, constantly dinting into people that the making available of the general purpose computer is the most powerful tool that humankind has really ever created, and making that tool available to a very, very broad group of people, not just young people, people of all ages, people in a non-commercial environment, people in a commercial environment, making those tools available to as many people as possible is a positive social good, and it's a thing that we're very, very committed to.
Yeah, I think it's a very powerful part of the story and not one that's talked about enough, right?
No, absolutely not.
I think that's a really important point you made, that democratizing access to computing isn't just about teachers and students, it's also about those entrepreneurs that you were talking about.
That's it. The general purpose computer, it's the most powerful tool that humankind has ever produced. It's a precious thing, actually. It's not a thing that we have any right to assume will continue to exist. And getting that into the hands of as many people all over the world as possible, particularly those, the small entrepreneurs, the makers, the people who have had some passion project, and suddenly they put it on social media and they wake up and they think, hang on a second, it's not just me who wants this. There's 100 people, maybe not as we found, 100,000 people, but maybe there's 100 people or 1,000 people who want this thing, and I can build a business around it. That's super exciting. We owe it to ourselves. It is a positive social good to get that tool into as many hands as possible. We talk a lot about our two organisations, right? We talk about the commercial organisation, Raspberry Pi Limited, now Raspberry Pi Holdings PLC. We talk about the foundation, right? But the interesting thing is that we kind of these two things exist inside this much larger thing called the Raspberry Pi movement, right? Yeah. So we've been we've been a community-focused organisation since day one. Liz spent 9 months talking about Raspberry Pi in between us saying we were going to do it and the first Raspberry Pi going out the door. There was that 9-10 month gap. And so, this has always been something which has been defined as much by the things that go on outside the organisations as it has by the things that go on inside.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, community and partnerships have been central, certainly from the foundation's perspective, and I know from the engineering company's perspective too, and will continue to be, right? Yeah. So, we help educate millions of young people. Over 2 million young people have taken part in our code clubs now, and they're powered by volunteers and educators who identify with Raspberry Pi. And I really, it's important to me that carries on in this next phase, that those individuals who are a wider part of the community still feel able to contribute and part of the mission.
Yeah, you have this idea that these are organisations, both of them, I think, but certainly our organisation that build the things that we want. I think why have Raspberry Pi computers been successful? Raspberry Pi computers have been successful because we build them for ourselves, and there are lots of people like us, and it's that kind of broader community that's taken Raspberry Pi, the mission and the hardware and the software to heart. That's turned this into something rather more than the sum of its parts.
So again, congratulations. I know it's been a lot of work, but what does this mean for you and the team? What's next?
Well, you'll have seen over the years the platforms that we build have become steadily more complicated, and that means a number of things. It means that we need larger engineering teams. It means we need to grow capabilities that we didn't have before. So 2021, we have been for a long time we have been an assembler of other people's silicon into products. Often that's silicon that we've been deeply involved in the creation of, but it is fundamentally other people's silicon. Then in 2021, you see us launch the RP2040 microcontroller and the Raspberry Pi Pico platform built around it. So that's the first Raspberry Pi which has Raspberry silicon in it. Then Raspberry Pi 5 that we launched in September last year, that has the RP1 IO controller. So these are new capabilities that we have to acquire in order to build new generations of the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi platform. Those are not cheap things to do. And so one of the exciting things for us about this is it frees us up. We have raised some, we did a primary raise here, so we've raised some capital to allow us to build out more engineering capabilities. So it really frees us up to build the next generation plus one, the next generation plus two of Raspberry Pi platform, which is super exciting. I can see, as we talked about that sort of 5 to 10 year road. I can see that road, and I can see some of the things that are on it, and I think the thing I'm most excited about is that this transaction has been an important part for my organisation. It's been an important part of setting us up to claim, to do some of that work and claim some of those opportunities that are going to come our way in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
And I think that for both organisations, that's probably the key thing, right? This is about the next phase of growth and impact for the foundation and Raspberry Pi, and it's bigger, better, reaching more people, and it's an absolute delight that we're able to do that with more shareholders on the team, more people involved.
And I've been doing this for a bit over a decade. You've been doing it for very nearly
almost
a decade.
Almost a decade. Yeah.
And the organisation, both organisations are almost well, completely unrecognisable. I think from where we were the day you walked in the office in 2015, and that there's still that sense of a kind of a never-ending upwards curve. That there are new horizons for you. You were talking about all of the work you're doing to build out the organisation as a global, the foundation as a global organisation. Yeah, similarly, we have opportunities to go and do. We have an end-to-end organisation. In my bit of the world, we have an end-to-end organisation that can do things all the way from designing semiconductor IP, the camera processing IP, and the Raspberry Pi was designed here, all the way through to the community management of the customer and the customer support programs at the other end. So we have this end-to-end organisation. We can do a lot, but there are still lots of things that we can't do or that we don't do, and so there are opportunities to fill in the blanks there and build an organisation which is just so much more capable than what we have even today.
It's exciting. We better get on with it, really.
Yeah, we had better.
Yeah.